And now, please welcome the No Bull Podcast.
No Bull, no Scotty, no Pippen, no Michael, no Jordan, no Bull. No Bull, yeah, no Bull.
Hi, this is Chuck Swirsky, and you're listening to No Bull AUK, Chicago Bulls podcast.
What's happening, people, and welcome back to another episode of No Bull, a UK Chicago Bulls podcast with me, Jimmy, from UK Chicago Bulls. Oh man, my guest today. It's been a minute since I recorded, but I am so happy to have this man on. Something we've been wanting to do for a while. We finally made the times work. Both been busy. Matt Peck from CHGO.
Hey, Jimmy.
How you doing?
I'm great, man. I'm thrilled to be on with you, man. Can't wait for this conversation.
I appreciate it so much. Obviously, you guys had me on when I was over in Chicago on the CHGO podcast, which was, it sounded crazy to you, but it was almost like a bit of a weird dream come true kind of thing for me. As you know, I followed you from day one, from the Debatables with Jordan and through to the Locked On Bulls and the Outsiders, and now obviously CHGO as well. So it was, I knew we were going to hook up when I was over there. I did not expect to be on that podcast, that's for sure.
And I took you to one of your many meals in Chicago that you said were way too big as far as the portions. Chicagoans eat good. I was like, well, Green Street Meats is right around the corner from our office. Let's have lunch. Let's take you to Green Street Meats. Yeah, I mean, it was so awesome to be a part of your visit because I think your visit meant so much to so many international Bulls fans. And that's something that we've always been aware of as fans who then turned into content creators. And now we're like, it's our full-time job talking about the Bulls every day. The coolest part is just how expansive, but also the sense of family you get from Bulls fans everywhere. And it was just really cool to see how much that trip and that visit to Chicago meant to you, but also how much other international Bulls fans enjoyed watching you get to have that experience, because it clearly means that much to all of us. And for those of us who are lucky enough to work down the street from United Center or live in Chicago or the surrounding suburbs, going to a game, going to a couple of games, being in and around various Bulls events, it's just sort of part of what you get as a fan. For those of you who live far away, my God, I mean, and just the same way that we all, connected briefly in Paris when the Bulls had a game there. It's just so cool to see that level of like familial support for fans of a team that live all over the world.
It's worldwide for sure. And I mean, I've touched on it so many times, but I honestly do get emotional. I know it sounds really stupid. I'm quite a passionate person, as most people know, but I get really emotional when I actually think back about that trip, which I actually do probably on a daily basis. And if I think about it too much, I do find myself getting a bit like, whoa, like it's all a bit overwhelming. But honestly, how welcome, and I know I said this to you before, the people of Chicago. I'm just a 39-year-old weirdo from across the pond who supports this team 3,998 miles away from my house. I expect, if I'm being honest, I expected a lot of Chicagoans to kind of be a bit like, who is this guy? Like, he runs a Bulls account, like, what? I don't get it. And I couldn't have been any more wrong. Like, everybody I met, everybody, I had a couple of on the comments, like I've said before, like you do on Twitter, right? You get some haters, you just ignore those ones. On the whole, honestly, it sounds really stupid, but I feel like I've kind of got a bit of a family in Chicago, even though I've only ever been once. It's just all. When I say that to my girlfriend, she thinks I'm absolutely nuts. But it's true.
She didn't come. She didn't really get the full experience, so she doesn't know. It's not stupid at all. Some people might say that it sounds cliche, or that you're trying to put too much value and worth into something that's just, at the end of the day, you're a sports fan. You root for the same team as these other people who root for that team. I have always felt earnestly in my heart that it means more than that. And there is something that feels very family-like about being a Bulls fan, and meeting and interacting with other Bulls fans and sharing in your mutual joy of rooting for the team together. And Bulls Fest this past weekend was the most recent awesome example of that. Of Bulls fans who were there, who we have interacted with, other Bulls content creators who we know, all getting together, hanging out, having a good time, and then meeting new Bulls fans who we had never met before, but were there at Bulls Fest. And it's one big happy family, man. And like sometimes it's not a 100% happy family if the Bulls are struggling, but the element of we all feel tied together because of this deep-rooted fandom that we all feel, it makes you feel like these are your friends. These aren't just fellow sports fans; they're your friends, and it also does feel somewhat like a family.
100%. Honestly, I think my girlfriend was kind of like, when I got back, she kind of didn't get it at all. She thought the whole thing was weird. Like, people were coming up to me, walking around the United Center, and recognizing me and things. And I think a lot of people didn't believe it was real. It's still so surreal to me. And when I got home, I think she texted me and said, right, I'm in the car park of the airport. Welcome home. Don't expect the VIP treatment you've been getting. You're back home now. You're a nobody again. Which is absolutely right.
Yeah.
But it was a bit
You're not getting a ride from Will Perdue. You're getting a ride from me.
Yeah, welcome back to Earth. But she did, obviously, you met her when we come to Paris, which was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she got it a little bit more because of that trip. She saw people in Paris were coming up to me, and which was weird. And I don't think I deal. I will talk to anyone, so I kind of just deal with it, and then afterwards I think about it and think, what the hell is going on? Whereas while it was happening, she was just looking at me like, why do these people know who you're just. You're literally a nobody. Like, why are these people coming up to you? Yeah. And there was this one girl come up to me and she said, "Oh my God, you're Jimmy from CHGO Bulls." She was from the UK as well. She'd gone over to Paris, and I said, "Yeah." And she was with her girlfriend, and I didn't realize, but we introduced obviously each other and stuff, and then her girlfriend and my girlfriend were chatting to each other, and I didn't realize until afterwards. But she said to my girlfriend, "I don't mean to be rude, but who is he?" And my girlfriend's response was, "Oh, don't worry, he's just nobody who talks a lot about balls." I was like, okay, fair enough. I mean, it's true, but you didn't have to be quite so brutal about it,
I mean, like similar things happened to us here in Chicago. We also like got spotted by a few people when we were all out in Paris. Like, if you're somewhere where there are a lot of Bulls fans, you'll get recognized for being someone who is a prominent member of Bulls social media, a Bulls content creator, and it still to this day. For Big Dave and myself, even for people who had a TV show about the Bulls for a couple of years, they're like, anytime either of us are together and somebody comes up to us and we get spotted by people who are like, "Oh my gosh, I listened to your podcast, I watch your show, whatever," we're always just like, what?
It's just weird, isn't it?
What?
I think we kind of forget that, like, even the biggest stars, like your Damage, your Zachs, they're just normal people, right?
Right. Yeah.
Obviously, they're going to get recognized a lot more than me or you, or certainly me anyway. But deep down, that these people are just normal people, and
yeah,
I think sometimes we forget about that because we look at them as our heroes or our superstars or however you may look at them. So
yeah,
it's all just very, very surreal.
Like, I have this image of DeMar DeRozan, just because you mentioned him specifically, in my mind as like, like the grizzled, lot of miles on his legs, trusty veteran of this Bulls team for the past couple of years. Like, I see him as like an old man of the NBA, and that's not meant to be insulting to DeMar. It's just like he has had a long, very illustrious, successful career, and he's in the latter stages of it. And then I, like, every once in a while remind myself, I'm like, dude, you're 2 years older than DeMar DeRozan.
I know. So obviously everyone knows how much I love Alex Caruso, right? And I had the chance to very, very briefly meet him when I was there, and I completely froze. Like a little girl in Disneyland meeting Cinderella or whoever it may be. I completely froze. And like you just said, I had to remind myself, I'm 39 years old. Yeah. I mean, look at this room, right? My girlfriend quite often comes in here and says, "Do you realize how old you are? Like, what the heck? This is like a 12-year-old boy's bedroom." Like,
look behind me. I mean, this is my office. Like, it's decorated like a 12-year-old sports fan.
She doesn't get it. That said, this is for you, man. I try to dress up the room. I changed those pictures quite a lot, those two. and we're both
I love
huge
it.
Dennis Rodman fans, and we're both huge Joakim Noah fans. Even though I wasn't watching when Joakim played, which everyone's probably well aware of. I'm
Look
rocking
at
my
that.
CHGO t-shirt,
He's repping the gear. Come on
which you
now.
guys gave me when I was in Chicago. And just to be that little bit more personal, I chose a hat today. It's the
Oh,
NBA Paris hat because that was when we last met.
yes.
So I tried to
Absolutely.
make it personal. Like, it's not
I
all
dig
just
it.
off the cuff.
I dig. I'm rocking my Nobody Goes to Cleveland on Vacation shirt today. For
Awesome,
you.
because we want to touch on that. If nobody's seen it, like, where the hell have you been? Matt Peck is the biggest Joakim Noah fan ever. Not that I've ever met, just the biggest Joakim Noah fan. It's not up for debate. If anybody wants to debate that, you just don't even attempt it. You're stupid. Matt met Joakim Noah in Paris. I was queuing up outside. That just goes to show you that I'm a pure citizen while Matt is living it up in the famous
We got
suite.
to skip the line.
If you haven't seen the video, go and watch it. It's all over YouTube. You'll find it. It's all over Twitter. I know you've touched on it, but I've got to touch on it again. I mean, has it even sunk in yet? Like, you got to meet Joakim Noah.
Well, first of all, let me say, I don't think it's a competition for who the biggest fan of, whether it's Joakim or insert player name. It's not a competition.
But if it was, I'd be giving you that Larry O'Brien trophy if it was a competition.
The biggest Joakim Noah fan in the world. I have just always been a loud advocate for how great he was as an NBA player and how great he is as a human being, and the fact that I love him for both of those reasons. So that being the case, and the fact that I've always been obsessed with Joe, yeah, it was always on my lifelong bucket list. Like, I'm sure as a sports fan, there are certain players that mean more to you than others for whatever reasons. That's like, my goodness, if you make a short list of players you would love to meet, to say thank you to them, to have a little opportunity to fanboy over them, to be starstruck by them. Joakim was, at the top of that list for me for many years. And me and my various Bulls content creating colleagues would always have a good laugh about it. Like, what would happen if that, if that moment ever presented itself, if that opportunity presented itself. Big Dave always joked about the fact that he would need to, like, be security, like, preventing me from stalking and harassing Joakim. And Big Dave, of course, ends up being my friend who facilitated Joakim and I actually getting that opportunity to meet, because he served as my offensive lineman through a sea of people at the NBA pop-up house in Paris, to finally have me and Joakim have our paths cross. It was surreal. I feel like I blacked out for a while in there while it was happening. But as Dave said, I very much came prepared. I was wearing this shirt, and then over this shirt, I was wearing another Joakim shirt, in the hopes that I would get the chance to run into him and meet him and at least briefly talk to him that day. And the fact that it went from being, I got to give him a quick handshake and say hello and say thank you, to something larger than that. That was, all right, well, at Joe's request, not mine, we're having this little photo op because he loves these t-shirts and thinks it's funny. And so now Joakim has his arm around me and we're taking pictures, and I'm just smiling ear to ear. Big Dave, I think, called me like a 6-year-old child, like the way that I was like fanboying and geeked out just being in Joe's presence. And then we were separated for a while, and then more people were taking pictures of my shirt just because they liked my shirt after Joe had wandered away. And then Joakim saw that people were still vibing with my shirt and then came back and we took more pictures together. Mostly I was just so happy to have the opportunity to tell Joakim Noah, my favorite Bull of all time, right alongside MJ, how much I appreciate everything he's done for Bulls fans. And obviously, specifically the kids of the city of Chicago, all the charitable work he's done, not just when he was playing for the Bulls back in the day, but continues to do, as I'm sure you are aware, as we've talked about on CHGO Bulls. this new one city basketball league that he launched in Chicago for the youth of Chicago,
Yeah.
bringing the city and divided neighborhoods and troubled youth together through their mutual love of basketball. The stuff like that he does, the Noah's Ark Foundation, the work that he's doing and his mother is doing for families that have gone through various trauma in the city of Chicago. I mean, the class act and the insane competitor he was on the court and all of this stuff that he does for Bulls fans and for the people of Chicago long after his career is over, despite the fact that he's not even from Chicago.
No.
He's not a Chicagoan.
No.
But I think, you know, for people like you who also are big Joakim fans, there's an appreciation for the fact that like we have adopted Joakim. Like you're an honorary Chicagoan because of everything you do for the people of this city. It's why we love you. And I couldn't believe that I was fortunate enough as a Bulls fan and a diehard Joe fan that I got the opportunity to say thank you to him for that, because it meant a hell of a lot to me.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think everyone can get that for sure. Obviously, like I've said before, everyone that knows my story knows I wasn't watching the Bulls when there was the D Rose, the Joakim Noah eras. Since getting back into basketball, I've obviously gone back and watched all that. And like you, whereas a lot of people's favourite player then was Derrick Rose, I loved Joakim Noah. I loved what he brought, his energy, all the passion. I mean, he left it all out there, right? And you knew what he was feeling because he wore his heart on his sleeve. I kind of feel I'm a little bit like that. Don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing myself to Joakim Noah anyway, but I love it when people show passion, right? I love it. I love that. And for me, he's one of my favourite Chicago Bulls players, even though I wasn't watching then. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I come on your show and I had already had this crazy trip and met so many awesome people, Will Perdue, everybody else, and it was all so surreal. And I kind of said it can't get any, like, it's gone, it's crazy, it can't get any more crazy than it already is. And the final game of the season, I'm going to shout out a couple of people. I won't name them. I will name one of them, which is because he was on your show at Bulls Fest, and that's Dan Moriarty. I don't normally name him.
Awesome
because
guy.
I don't know if he wants me to, but seeing as he was on your podcast, I feel like I can. Dan was so awesome to me in that trip, and he got me a picture on the court at the end and stuff. And then there was another guy who I won't mention who he was, but he's kind of a big deal, if you like. And he had a game used net for me. And basically, Dan Moriarty said, "What else was on your list before you go home? You got your picture on the court." And I said, "I just want as many signatures on my my Bulls jersey as possible." And Dan put me in the prime position. He said, "Look, I can't promise you're going to get like Zach DeMar, but I'll put you in a prime position where you may be able to." And I was stood there like with my jersey, like a 10-year-old child. And with that, this particular person come down and said, "I've got your net upstairs. Come with me. We'll go and get it." And I went, "But I don't want to be ungrateful, but can I get it in a bit because I'm trying to get signatures?" He said,
"Right.
Oh, don't worry. I'll bring you right back here. It's fine." So with that, he moves the fence. I walk through the tunnel. What the hell is going on? I'm in the Bulls tunnel at the United Center. And he's like, "Oh, that's where the Lover Bulls dressing room is. That's where the players' dressing room is. By the way, don't even think about it. You can't get in there. There's the officials, blah, blah, blah." He said, "But come with me. We're going to get in the elevator and go up to where we need to go." And as we turn the corner, I spot Joakim Noah. And I couldn't have been any less cool if I tried. And I've just gone, "Holy, there's Joakim Noah." Yeah. And this particular guy said to me, "Calm down. It's all good. I know Joe." And I won't say why he knows him because I don't want to give the guy away. But it turns out he knew Joakim Noah pretty well. Mm-hmm. But as he's saying to me, "Calm down," I've just gone, "Joe!" in panic. And I've seen this massive hand stop the elevator door closing. It opens back up and he walks out. And I just stood there like this, frozen. Like, oh, now what do I do? And with that, luckily, the guy who knows him pretty well was like, "Joe, can you meet my friend Jimmy? He's come over from the UK. He's walked over. He's shaken he's just hugged me." And I'm like, I'm I'm hugging Joakim Noah right now. What the hell's going on?
Yeah.
And yet all I could think about was Matt's gonna kill me. Because I was on your podcast like 3 or 4 days before this, and we joked about it, right? And
We
I
did.
think Big Dave said, "What about if you met Joakim Noah?" And I was like, "I couldn't do that. Matt would kill me."
And that trip of yours was before our Paris trip when I got my turn. I remember you sent me a DM of the picture of you and Joe saying like, "Please don't hate me for this."
I was still in the lift. That happened about 10 seconds before I sent. You were the first person I thought about, and I was like, I've got to send it to Matt first and foremost before I put it on Twitter. And it ended up going on the Jumbotron as well, and it was so surreal. And I think, like you just said, like that speaks to the person he is. Forget about the player and everything else. Like, he didn't have to stop that elevator, right? The doors were closing. He could have just gone, right? He probably gets his name called all the time. But yet he still stopped and took like 3 or 4 minutes out of his day, which of course is nothing to him, but a lot of people would not have done that.
Right.
And yet it's something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. And it's just, that just goes to, like you just said, forget about the basketball player, the person that he is.
He didn't have to take a bunch of pictures with me when we ran into each other in Paris. He could have just shaken my hand and moved on. But you know, I think it was when he finally had that sit down on Kevin Garnett's pod, like earlier this year. It's a few months back, and they sort of like finally squashed their long-standing beef as players and rivals on Kevin Garnett's show. And somewhere in their conversation, you know, KG was asking Joakim about what he's doing now in Chicago and with the 1 CD and the adoration that Joakim has built among Bulls fans that he still has, even though he's, you know, long retired and left the Bulls, you know, 7 or 8 years ago now. Is Joe is aware of the fact that putting it all out there on the floor when he did play, but then also understanding how much athletes who put on that jersey mean to the fans of that team. He gets it. He understands it. He said like that, between that and the fact that I'm still giving back to the city of Chicago, like that's why people love me in Chicago. It's not because of various statistics that I accomplished or games that I helped us win. It was, I put everything out there as a competitor. Simultaneously to that, I was fully aware what it means to the fans of the city, to the fans of the team, to do the job that I do. And I think he's a rare example of one of those athletes who truly gets that and will go out of his way and give more of his time than is expected or asked of him because he understands what it means to the truly diehard fans.
Yeah, 100%. I think you've hit the absolute nail on the head. And going back to Paris, how cool he was then. I mean, I knew he was going to be in Paris, so I took that jersey with me because obviously I didn't have that in Chicago. And it was all a bit of a scramble. And I kind of just called him again. And he stopped. And obviously he's an absolute giant, isn't he?
Oh, my God.
And he stopped. And I just kind of threw my jersey at him and said, Joe, please, can you sign this? And he kind of like pushed everyone out and said, yeah, no problem. And it was, I mean, you saw what it was like when you got, I mean, you guys were quite lucky because it was quite empty when you were in there. But it was chaos when it opened up to everyone.
It was a madhouse.
It
was like a swarm of people. And then somebody a head taller than everybody. It was actually really fun.
I said to my girlfriend, I'm so sorry, but she was like, I'm just going to wait out the way. You do what you got to do and then come and find me afterwards. And I kind of just got in with it all. And I mean, yeah, he did. He took it. He signed it again. I reminded him about Chicago and he was like, oh, you're going to go back? I said, of course. I just don't know when. And I mean, awesome man. So yeah. I don't think, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to any of your family or Big Dave probably more than anyone. I don't think anyone was happier for you when that event happened than me. And I don't mean any disrespect to Big Dave because I know he was so happy for you, but I was so happy that happened.
And probably relieved that your guilt had been lifted because you had gotten your chance before I did. Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, that's fine. That's totally fine. And like just like the amount of support, the outpouring of love and not jealousy, but genuine happiness that you got from all of these various Bulls fans who knew you as UK Bulls Jimmy, who was making his first trip to Chicago to see the Bulls up close. Like people were happy for you for that. And in a very same way, when we started posting some pictures and little video clips of me getting my turn to meet Joe and Perez. It was just overwhelmingly positive feedback from Bulls fans who know how much I love Joakim and obviously knew how much a moment like that happening meant to me, and were nothing but happy for me seeing it happen, which is just it's so cool. Honestly, it's like so freaking cool that Bulls fans are that supportive of one another, because there is also sometimes that element of it, like it starts as debate just because you have differing basketball opinions as a Bulls fan talking to other Bulls fans on social media, and sometimes that can get really nasty and negative.
Yeah.
And it's like people start attacking each other and attacking their intelligence or attacking this or that or personality accusations and insults and all that. There is that element to it too. So it's nice to get those reminders sometimes when it's like when the truly genuine I am moved to tears as a sports fan stuff like that happens, everybody is nothing but happy for you.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the genuine Bulls fan, certainly from my experience anyway. They are generally just happy for people. I was gutted I couldn't get to Bulls Fest. I seriously contemplated it. If I'd won the lottery, I was coming. I actually was on with Matt and Neil from CHGO UK a couple of weeks back, and I said, by the way, I'm trying to win the lottery. If it happens, we're all going out to Bulls Fest. But obviously it didn't happen. I didn't get there, but I will be back at some point.
You were there in spirit. You were there.
I was there in spirit.
Matt and Neil were there. Our guy Troy was there. Mark K was there. all the international Bulls fans were there in spirit.
What was crazy to me was I was getting DMs and voice notes from people there, and it was just like, you're there having a great, like, why are you thinking of me? I mean, it's awesome, and I really appreciate it, and I feel the love, but it is crazy to me. Absolutely crazy to me. Yeah, anyway, enough on Joakim, enough on my trip, almost enough on my trip. Before I go, I want to publicly thank you for taking care of my food that night. You picked up the bill for that food. What was it called? Green Street Meats?
Green Street Meats.
Right, I'm going to write that down because somebody was asking me for tips. They're going to Chicago, and I couldn't remember what it was called. So, yeah, it was awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
Unless you're
they enjoy some good cuts of meat and some delicious sides. You send them to Green Street Meats.
Unless you're a vegetarian, then avoid it like the plague.
If they're a vegetarian, then you shouldn't be their friend. And I say that as someone who is barely accepting the fact that Big Dave, who is one of my best friends in the world, is a pescatarian, which basically to me is the same thing as being a vegetarian. Yeah. It's just I put up with it and I make an exception because Big Dave's just that awesome.
Yeah, and shout out to him as well, because when I was leaving your studio that night, obviously I was going to the Blackhawks game. I didn't know how much time I was going to have, so I took my Blackhawks hoodie with me. It turned out I had plenty of time to get back to the hotel, and Dave was like, how are you getting back? I was like, I'm probably just going to walk, because I walk most places, because I was taken in the city, I wanted to see it all. And Dave was like, you won't make it, I'm getting you an Uber. And yeah, he wouldn't take no for an answer. So shout out to Big Dave for getting my Uber back as well, which probably cost him about $30 or something. So,
classic Dave.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, so much love for that man. I think everyone's got love for Dave, right? He's just that kind of. He's so infectious.
That's most of what I have enjoyed over the last nearly 5 years now, working with and knowing Dave and being friends with him, is like he gives me just a little bit of credibility because he lets me hang out with him and be around him and be seen in public with him. And people who are obsessed with Big Dave for the obvious reasons of how cool he is, how smart he is, how kind he is, how funny he is, just kind of give me a little bit of like, oh, and yeah, you too. You're that other guy who's around Big Dave a lot. And I'm like, I'll take it. I will take it.
No, he is awesome. But you listen, don't be so hard on yourself. You're awesome too. And my girlfriend Ness, shout out to Ness. She enjoyed meeting you both as well. So in Paris,
she's so
that
nice.
Was cool.
So nice.
Yeah, she really is. Not many people would let someone go to Chicago for 9 nights on their own. So she's awesome. Not just that though. She's generally pretty awesome. To be fair, it wasn't just that. Right. I got so much I want to talk about. I'm conscious of your time. I've listened to your most recent podcast, but not all of it. I've run out of time. As you know, my circumstance changed. My podcast listening took a big hit. So I haven't listened to the Mark Eversley part yet, which is what I'm going to do once I come off this recording. Mark Eversley's a cool guy. I was lucky enough to meet him in Chicago very briefly. Mm-hmm. He was actually born in London, which I didn't know as well. how was that meeting Mark? I haven't, like I said, I haven't listened to that part of it yet, which I do apologize for. Terrible from my part. But how was that? Because I found him as a really cool dude.
Yeah. Well, we all have busy lives. You know, when you can catch up on your podcast, catch up on your podcast. I'm not going to hold that against you. Yeah. So it was only like my second or maybe third interaction with Eversley over the last couple of years since he and AK took those jobs, and the first two were very brief. That was the first time I got with along with Dave and Will, a chance to sit down with him and have a more thorough conversation about a variety of things. It was cool to talk to him a bit more about his background. You know, we talked with him about working for Nike back in the day before transitioning into being, an NBA front office person. And he talked about how he cultivated relationships with a lot of players through that Nike position, including DeMar DeRozan. And it was sort of like a humble brag. He was like, DeMar came and signed with us because I knew who he was as a player, as a family man, and we had a lot of mutual respect across the board for basketball and non-basketball things, and we had a strong relationship, and that's how we approached DeMar and managed to actually win DeMar in free agency that summer. And he also, I thought, was we did our best to kind of like break the ice with a couple of just fun, no pressure questions out of the gate, because from what we've reserved, Mark and also AK can be reserved with the media.
Yes.
And not to say that that's a character flaw or something that I'm saying is bad. I'm just saying a lot of those front office people, whether it be basketball or any other sport, that they're not public speakers, and they don't like public speaking. They like scouting basketball players. And look, if the team is falling short or having just fallen short last season of their own stated goals, they said coming into last season, our goal is to be better than what we did last year. So that would mean maybe being better than a 6th seed, or at least going to the playoffs again and doing better than losing in 5 games in the first round. They failed to do that. Bulls fans know that they failed to do that and enjoy calling them out about that and are saying, how are you going to fix it? How are you getting this team back on the right track? Shout out Chris Farley. And I think that they're always, whether it's them or anybody else whose jobs have a lot of pressure in those front office positions, it's like staring down the media is like staring down the barrel of a gun. They're fearful that every question that they get thrown their way is going to be accusatory and insulting in some way, questioning their ability to do their job well. That's kind of how sports fans always behave towards the front office, unless your team just won the championship.
Yeah.
That's how sports fans behave towards their front offices. Sometimes it's more justified with their frustration and their critique of these people's job performances than it is at other times. So all that being said, I thought that Mark came out of his shell more with us than I had seen him do in any other interviews that were maybe more like, here we are at the podium. Here are a handful of media from different media outlets, and it's draft night, or it's free agency, or it's this, or it's, and, we just tried to have some fun with him and also get him to talk a little bit about the moves they made in the offseason, the goals they have ahead for this upcoming season. And look, did he paint a rosier picture for the team where they are now and where they could go moving forward than maybe the average Bulls fan feels right now? Yeah, of course. But even for people whose job is partly to answer questions to the media when they don't want to and give as much of a positive spin on whatever's going on as possible, it's not like he's going to go out there and say, yeah, well, we might be a playing team again this year and that'll suck, but we are where we are. Like, no, they're going to spin it as positively as possible, because of course they will.
I would love to see Bulls Twitter if he did come out and say that, by the way.
Look, I saw Bulls people on Twitter reaming some of his answers for the interview he did before he chatted with us, which was chatting with the NBC Sports Chicago crew on like a Bulls talk show that they were doing for Bulls Fest. And maybe some people will criticize the answers he gave to us or the softness of the questions we asked him, who maybe wanted more hard-hitting stuff thrown his way. But look, we're cultivating a relationship with the Bulls one day and one event and one question at a time. What good will it do us to just basically in a interview ask Mark Eversley questions that say, hey, we think you're failing at your job right now? Because while I personally think that he and AK have made a couple of missteps over the last 3 years, I also think they've done some things very well. They're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place right now, But I would say I am not nearly as frustrated as the average Bulls fan is when it comes to this front office's job performance thus far. And I tried to remind myself of that while I was asking questions that Mark I thought was genuinely honest in answering, even if they were through a bit rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, I think I actually agree with your guy on on the CHGO podcast, Will Goatley's sort of side of it, which it's fine to be annoyed that they kind of run it back, but at the same time, it's fine to believe that actually running it back how they have with the big three, if you like, with of course DeMar, Zach, and Vooch, they've actually made two very good additions to that roster. So you can feel both. It's okay to feel both. You don't have to be one or the other. And I thought he put that really well. So shout out to Will for that, because that's kind of exactly how I feel, right? And it's like I said to the guys on the C Red the other week, I kind of feel like a bit of a hypocrite because I said they cannot run this back, right? Continuity it cannot happen. It just didn't work, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to re-sign Vooch. I was happy when I did that. I wanted to re-sign Kobe because I thought this time last year I'd given up on him. No disrespect to him as a person, but I had. But I was happy they re-signed him because I thought he was phenomenal last year. I wanted them to keep Io. And I wanted them to keep Javonte, and I wanted them to keep Derek Jones Jr. And then I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute, because I want them to change it up, but I actually want them to re-sign all the players they had last year. So,
Yeah.
am I the ultimate hypocrite? I don't know.
Well, and look, I mean, maybe they can readjust and get more out of not just the additions of Javon Carter and Torrey Craig, who I think most Bulls fans agree are, they're not earth-shattering changes, but they're solid additions. Those guys are going to get real minutes in Billy's rotation, whether they end up starting or coming off the bench, or sometimes, or it's a combination of both over the course of a 82-game season. They're getting minutes and they're going to contribute. They hopefully will help this team's three-point shot profile a bit. And beyond that, you can look internally for more improvement from Kobe White, from Patrick Williams, from Io, the younger guys, and hope that collectively that allows them to be in a lot of games just as they were last year. Instead of losing a bunch of games in year one of the DeMar DeRozan, Zach, Vooch, Caruso, Lonzo years, they won a lot of close games, and then last season they lost a lot of close games. They could be in that hunt, so much so that they could be in a hunt to avoid the play-in and secure maybe the 5th or 6th seed in the East. I'm not saying it's likely, but I'm saying it's sure as shit possible. People who are ruling that out as a possibility before they start just because they're frustrated that they ran it back, like this team went 40-42. They could easily turn 6 losses into 6 wins and finish with 46 or 47 wins again, and then you're talking about avoiding the play-in tournament, depending on what other teams in the East do. So, yeah, I mean, I get it. To me, the biggest one now that they re-signed Vooch and they re-signed Kobe, they re-signed Io, they kept these guys together for one more run. Obviously, your heart aches for Lonzo Ball, who we just saw do an interview the other day where he basically said, yeah, I feel bad for the front office. They brought me in. I was a great fit. I was the missing piece to this puzzle. I'm out. I'm going to be out all this season. And that's one of the biggest reasons why the Bulls front office has backed themselves into the corner where they find themselves now. But beyond that, and Lonzo maybe never playing ever again, now the biggest question is, do they extend DeMar? Because that, for those who want to change a pace on this team, who thought that maybe they should have seen the writing on the wall at the trade deadline last season and shopped around DeMar, shopped around Zach maybe, and made a swift change of direction. They didn't. They're running it back again. If they run it back again and are a mediocre team in the East again this season, do they then say, well, continuity, DeMar, here's a new contract? Because that's when I would say, like, I think we're taking continuity a step too far.
Enough's enough, yeah.
I think most Bulls fans believe that there is a ceiling to this team, even if they win more close games than they lose and play above the level they played at last season. They're not winning a chip with this collection of players.
No.
They're not.
No, they're not. No, I completely agree with that. I it's funny you bring it up because the next thing I was going to say about was I was going to try and make today's podcast a Lonzo Ball free zone, because I feel like I bring him up every time I record because it pains
I'm
me
sorry.
so much. No, but before you brought it up, it was actually on my schedule to bring up anyway, purely because he did the podcast with Trey Young. And I think it hurt. Everybody saw the clip about him saying, they built a team around him, and it was his time to shine. And I think a lot of people do forget that we were number one in the East when he went down. And I remember before that saying, I think I commented on something that Mark Kay put out about, I felt that Lonzo was our most important player, not our best player, our most important player. And Mark, in true Mark fashion, completely disagreed with me publicly and said, I respect, he wasn't nasty about it, which is fine. He completely disagreed. And I said, Mark, I'm not saying the best player, I'm saying the most important. And he said, I know what you're saying, I still disagree. And I thought, fair enough, right? Everyone's entitled to their opinions, right? I would love for you to bring that up on your podcast next time. I know you don't often record with Mark. I know you did last week. I would love to know his opinion now, if he still thinks that Lonzo might be the most important player.
The last I heard him talking about it, that's exactly how he explained it to me as well, is what you said when you got into it with him, is that he doesn't agree that Lonzo's that important to this team. I tend to side with you. I think he is that important because, I mean, he brought two things that the Bulls really needed for an offense that was shallow at times, stuck in the mud at times. He brought a high volume of accurate three-point shooting, which obviously they needed and then sorely miss without him now. Lowest three-point shooting volume in the NBA 2 seasons running. And the easy points he generated between his defense, which created steals, and his passing and court vision in transition.
Incredible.
High-flying dunks for Zach and Javante and all of his teammates, and alley-oops, and Lonzo's defense, coupled with his court vision and transition passing ability, gave the Bulls 10 free easy points every night that they needed.
So get over the line on those games.
Half-court offense was just so, not creative. They had a mid-court, a mid-range master in DeMar DeRozan. They had a shooter and a slasher in Zach. Most of the other pieces they had on the roster were one-way players who could play great defense and couldn't hit a bucket to save their lives, or guys who could score but couldn't play any defense. Lonzo was their best two-way player. Flat out.
Yep.
Flat out, he was their best two-way player, and it hurt a lot when they lost him.
You're as passionate as I am. That's awesome. I think you just answered my question. I didn't know how good he was when we signed him. I mean, this Bulls team has been crying out for a legit point guard for so long. They finally got one, and guess what happens once again? It's like the Chicago Bulls point guard curse, right? Oh man, it sucks so much. I didn't want to get down about it because I do sound like a broken record, like most of Bulls Nation. But Javon Carter's come in, and listen, I'm not saying he's Lonzo Ball by any stretch of the imagination, but he does bring, I think, what we need. I think, like you said, he's obviously a solid three-point shooter. I think Bulls Nation might be expecting a bit too much of him from the three-point range. I don't know. But I think he improves this team, right? I mean, what's your starting five going into next season right now off the bat? What would you...
So I still am open to hearing arguments from different people who have different opinions on what the starting five should be. As far as the backcourt, I think I'm leaning towards starting Javon Carter over Io or over Kobe White. I know that there's a big faction of Bulls fans who are firm believers in Kobe after the season he had last year, that want to see him get another shot at that starting point guard job, which he seemed not quite ready for a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I don't think Kobe is a starting caliber player, as someone who could play on the ball and off the ball. I feel like his decision-making got a little bit better when he was a ball handler last season.
Yep. 100%.
And then obviously he took steps on the defensive end that allowed him to be less of a liability. And so, like, in Kobe's earlier years, if he wasn't hitting his shot, you couldn't play him.
No,
because he was
completely
giving
agree.
you he was getting picked on defense and giving you nothing on offense. Now
Yeah.
he's gotten better at getting to the rim. His finishing at the rim has improved tremendously. He's starting to become a better decision maker and passer and playmaker when he is on ball. He's still streaky behind the 3-point line. If he could just go from being a streaky 3-point shooter to, eliminating those stretches where he'll shoot 2 of 25 over the span of 3 or 4 games, then he's a legitimate offensive weapon. I still think he could thrive in a 6-man role, and I think that's where I would put him to start the season. Unless Billy sees something in training camp and a handful of preseason games that he thinks actually our best foot forward every night is having Kobe out there instead of Javon. It could go down that way. Billy might see that. I think right now Javon is the more likely candidate. He gives you some 3-point shooting ability. He gives you perimeter defense that is not just Kobe's, which is improved, but legitimate, strong perimeter defense. As far as the rest of the starting 5, obviously Zach, Vooch, DeMar are going to be in there. The other question mark is who's playing the 4. Is it going to be more of a 3-guard lineup if Caruso gets thrown in there? Because Billy went to Caruso as a starter down the stretch last season. Is it Pat? Is it Torrey Craig? Those are obviously the 3 options. I have no idea which way Billy's leaning right now, and I don't really know where I'm leaning right now.
I'm personally between Pat and Torrey Craig. Personally, everyone knows how much I love Alex Caruso. I would not start him, and I don't think that's disrespectful to say. I think he's great as a mentor on the bench, and then his impact coming off the bench for me, I think he will do better for the team than starting. That's my opinion, and I'm the biggest Alex Caruso fan I know, and I wouldn't start him. But I don't think I think when you say I wouldn't start them, some people think that's disrespectful. I don't think it is. I think me saying that about Caruso hopefully proves that it's not a disrespectful thing. It's just how that player kind of suits their roles, right?
Right.
I agree. I think I'd written Kobe White off as a point guard. This time last year, he was not a point guard. He was a 2-guard. And now I think he's shown flashes that he could be a point guard. And I am so happy to be proved wrong about that. I've written it off, and I am so happy to be proved wrong. And I hope he can do that, whether he's a starting point guard or off the bench. I would love to see Kobe as the main ball handler. I think it'd be great, and it would prove a lot of people wrong, including myself. So
and he gives them more length and more size at that position,
absolutely,
in the backcourt that I think some Bulls fans are quick to overlook. Like Kobe's like a legit 6'5", and he has gotten better at using his body, to not only make things happen on the offensive end, and he's gotten a little craftier with his moves in and around the basket. And shaking off defenders, but he's also so much better at navigating screens than he was a couple years ago.
Oh God, yeah.
And he's now becoming a guard who is whether you're playing at the point or at the 2-guard spot, a legit 6'5" with good length, and is now figuring out how to actually use the physical tools he has. That's a nice piece, and you could throw that into the argument for those who think Kobe is a starting caliber guard.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, like you just said, he is a legit 6'5". I mean, when I was in Chicago and I was watching him warm up and I was pretty close to him, I couldn't believe how big he actually was. I don't think people realize. It doesn't look it on the telly, but he's legit got height on him. That's for sure. I'm conscious of your time, Matt, so I'm gonna quickly run through these. Obviously, Javon was on your podcast, Javon Carter, and there's a couple of things that he said that I actually really liked. And you see it so often that players come to teams and they go, "I always wanted to play for this team," and once they come calling, there was no one else. Javon Carter didn't say that, despite being a Chicagoan. And I think Big Dave said to him, when you heard the Bulls come calling, was that it? Everything else was off the table. And his response was, no. It's a business decision, but the Chicago Bulls came with the business. And I thought, do you know what? That is so refreshing to hear.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just talking, saying things that the fans want to hear. And I thought that might have upset a few people. For me, I respect the honesty about it.
Yeah, I thought it. Yeah, I mean, you used the word that I was thinking. It was a refreshingly honest answer from a player who wasn't just giving lip service for a question that he said he's been asked often. But he still feels that way and acknowledging the business element to this of being a professional athlete. But he also then did tell us when answering a different question how excited he is to put on a Bulls jersey for the first time. And like we asked, and he said,
He's not done it yet.
He said, I haven't even put on a Bulls jersey yet. And like you could see the excitement in his face. Like his face lit up when he just thought about the fact that at some point in the very near future, he's going to put on a Bulls jersey that has his name on the back of it for the first time. And how easy it is for Bulls fans to understand what that means for a kid who grew up in and around Chicago, who grew up a Bulls fan and is about to get that opportunity. We know what it meant to Derek. We know what it meant to Ayo Dosunmu.
Yeah.
Because we all felt the same when we were kids. I want to be a Chicago Bull when I grow up. Most of us don't get there, and that's how it's supposed to work. 0.0001% of Bulls fans who dream of being a Bull someday actually have it happen. And when you see the ones that it is happening for react to it with that childlike wonder of actually taking in the reality of the situation, as a fan yourself, it's just so heartwarming.
I'm one of the 99.999999%. Over the other side of the world, I remember I was banging into it at school, and I told one of my school friends, I'm going to be in the NBA and I'm going to play for the Chicago Bulls. His response was, absolutely no chance. He was so right. I mean, I suck at basketball. So he couldn't have been any more right. But in my head, that's what I wanted to be. But yeah, shout out Anthony. He was absolutely right. The other thing Javon Carter said was, I can't remember, I think it was Will, I can't remember, maybe yourself, who asked the question about what will fans... what would you say that you're bringing to the Chicago Bulls? What would you tell the fans that you're bringing? And his response was, I don't like to talk about that. The fans can come and see me and make their own opinions. And again, I thought, not just you're talking. This is a man that's not just talking for the sake of talking. He means what he's saying. And again, it was just so refreshing to hear.
He seems like someone who's very no nonsense in the way that he answers questions, interacts with the media. Like, like, not to say that he's like robotic and so, like, we also, we talked to him about the like the training camp that he organized right when he got back to Chicago and has helped grow for like basketball program for kids in Chicago. He cares about the charitable work that's attached to being an athlete and giving back to the community. But when it comes to what his job is on a basketball court, like I think back to a game he had for Milwaukee, where like I think they were missing a couple of key guys, and he poured in like 35 points and led them to a big win. And he was doing a sideline interview with some reporter after the game, and they asked him something along the lines of like, when did you know that you were going to be really put in a position where you might have to take over this game and that you were ready to take over this game? And his answer bluntly was just, when I woke up this morning. It was like, dude he just wants the ball. He just wants the ball. Brilliant. He just wants to win. And I think Bulls fans, once they get past that first, like what seems to be abrasive attitude, will actually come to admire and love the fact that he's just like, as my buddy Dave was, he's got some of that dog in him. He's got a little bit of that goon in him. And I think Bulls fans love that.
I think he's going to be a big fan favorite. I called it quite early on, and shout out to Sean, who runs the UK Milwaukee Bucks page. He messaged me and said, you're going to love Javon Carter. That's a great pick. That's a great get. He said, I'm gutted to see him leave Milwaukee. And yeah, I really do think he's going to be a fan's favorite. Yeah, so fingers crossed, man. I'm excited for this season.
First Javon and then Giannis. That's the new plan, right, Jimmy?
Yeah, I reckon. Why not, right? Why not? Let's do it. He has said it's possible. I mean...
He did.
Maybe it is. Matt, one more thing before you go.
Sure.
I had lined up a surprise tonight, but sadly he couldn't make it because he's at a football or soccer, if you like, game. Nathan. CHGO tattoo on his hand.
Nathan? CHGO
Nathan.
diehard Nathan?
Yep. So I messaged Nathan once we had set a date in stone and said, right, I'm getting Matt Peck on. It's Tuesday the 22nd, 7 o'clock. Can you jump on at the end to surprise Matt with you and everything else? I think he's going to freak out. And he was like, yeah, I'm up for that. It'll be cool. And then I kind of messaged him last week and said, are we still good? And he completely forgot. He promised his kid that he was going to take them to the football game. So he couldn't make it. And he's absolutely gutted that he couldn't make it. But
I feel like he made the right choice there. being a good one for the kiddos, taking the kiddos somewhere they want to be. That is way more important than popping onto a Bulls podcast with your buddy and me. Say hi, but man, shout out to him. I'm
crazy.
I could not believe me and Dave and Will, everybody at CHGO, when we saw that tweet, we're like, holy shit, this guy is out of his freaking mind. He got a tattoo of our Bulls podcast logo on his body. What?
And on his hand as well.
Yeah.
It's not even somewhere like he can hide it. It's
right.
I mean, that's got to be the first CHGO podcast tattoo, right?
Yeah, well,
I would imagine.
So an actual member of our staff, Greg, who I absolutely love to death, he's one of the guys on our Blackhawks crew. He got a CHGO tat.
Oh, okay.
And so he was the first one. But as far as like people who engage with CHGO's content who don't actively work for CHGO, yes, Nathan was the first like super fan to get something CHGO related tatted on his body, which is crazy. I'm so glad that the CEO of our company, our All City Network, saw that and was so blown away by it that he was like, give me your mailing address. I'm going to send you a bunch of free stuff. So like send him a bunch of CHGO t-shirts.
Yeah,
and,
I saw
that. Because I mean, that is true. That's insane to me. The fact that someone has a tattoo on their body in permanent tattoo ink of the logo of our Bulls podcast because they enjoy it that much and want to show that much love. That is insane to me, but my God, I love it and appreciate it so much because that's insane. That's the insane level of Bulls fandom, but also showing that much support to what we do. And it's the same way that Dave and I and Jordan, Sabine, whoever have had so much appreciation and love for you over the years, man. Like you said, like you've been listening to us do Bulls podcasts since way back before the days of CHGO
I'm
and
rocking
Bulls
a
Outsiders
t-shirt,
and all
man.
that.
Nathan's got a tattoo. I feel like I need to up my game of support.
Please do not feel the need to permanently ink yourself to compete with Nathan about who the bigger fan is.
My girlfriend might actually kill me.
We are honestly like, dude, we're blown away when people share their Spotify Wraps with us at the end of the year. That's like, here's how many hours of CHGO Bulls I listened to. We're like, you people are, but man, we appreciate every single one of them. Every single one of them.
Yeah, Bulls Nation's strong worldwide. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Damn right.
Matt, thank you so much. I mean, I didn't touch on half the things I wanted to.
We can do it again.
We'll have to catch up again sometime for sure. And if you're ever this side of the pond again, we got to hook up again. And likewise, I will be back at some point. I just don't know when it's going to be. But
yeah, I really wanted to head out there for the Cubs series that happened in London earlier this summer, but it was like butted up right before the 4th of July and then Vegas. So that was already a really busy time of summer for me. So it just, and it was also like right around when the NBA draft was going on. So I was like, it's not going to work. My brother actually went out there with a buddy to catch the Cubs London game and was like, you should come too. And I was like, I would if I could, but I think I told you, I did my junior year or my junior semester abroad in London.
You did, yeah.
And I loved it. I love the city of London. But I would love to come back and continue to explore and revisit the places that I was and go to some more spots I haven't been to yet. And I would love for you to be my tour guide. So
oh man,
somewhere down the line when life gets less busy, if that ever happens, yeah, it's on my list of things to do is go back to the UK and pay another visit.
Well, when you do, let me know for sure. We'll hook up. I was actually meant to be. I had tickets for the Cubs game on the Saturday. And I actually forgot we had a wedding on that day, so I had to sell them. I lost like £100 as well on them.
Stupid weddings.
Yeah, if I didn't go, I think my girlfriend might have killed me. As good as she is, it was one of her really good friends, so I couldn't. I did ask them if they would consider changing the date of their wedding, and they quickly told me they wouldn't, which I thought was really selfish.
That's
Selfish,
just
but
yeah, that's just really rude of them. It's
yeah, I
really
mean,
inconsiderate.
shout out Mike and Anthea anyway, and the newlyweds and all that. Blah blah blah. Thanks for making me miss a great Cubs game. No, honestly, no, I don't mean that. They're not going to listen to this anyway. But it's actually a really lovely day. So what I mean is, thank you for allowing me to be part of your amazing day. That's what I meant to say.
That's the right answer. There you go.
No, it was an awesome day. Yeah, you can't have it all, right? Matt, thank you so much, man. It's been great just catching up with you. You know how much I love you and everything you do and everything else. So
Dude,
yeah, thank you so much.
Goes right back at you, man. You know how much we appreciate your love and support over the years, and you know, anytime you want to talk Bulls hoops or anything else, we're an ocean away, but we're only a Zoom away. So
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Quick shout out on your handles, by the way, before you go. Sorry. Just in case anyone's been living under a rock and doesn't know.
I somehow just tore the cord out of my headphones.
We lost it. Quick shout out on your handles, just in case anyone's been living under a rock and doesn't know where you're at.
Yeah, you can find me at Bulls_Peck on Twitter. That's right. I still call it Twitter. I refuse to call it the other thing. We are at CHGO_Bulls. And you can follow my guys, Marquez, MK Hoops, Will the Go Gottlieb, Will_Gottlieb. Big Dave is Bow, BAWL Sports.
Bow!
And yeah, you know the drill. Even in the offseason, even at the dregs of the offseason, late August, September, before training camp, we are still giving our fellow Bulls fans 5 episodes a week, talking Bulls, talking whatever, Bulls and NBA related. So tune in.
Don't know how you guys do it. Absolute nothing but respect. One very, very quick last thing. Because this still haunts me now, 7 months on, however long it's been. Dave caught me out on the podcast, which made it look like I didn't listen. Matt, what time is it?
Game time, who?
There we go. Thank you so much, guys.
On your toes, baby, on your toes.
Guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed listening to watching this as much as I have recording it. Until next time, go Bulls.
Woo!